one for you here, super
Sure.
chat. This, I figured it would come up. I've answered it a million times, but usually in the comment section. Michael A asks, and by the way, thank you for the super chat. There might be less schism if people didn't have the impression that heresy, for example, the German bishops, was permitted at the same time as the TLM suppression. The optics of the Pope's priority is impactful. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, it's something that I've written about quite a few times, and I think it has to do with the difference between dissent on the left and dissent on the right. Most of the people that I mean, just think about the people, everybody think of a liberal Catholic in your life who doesn't believe in something that the church teaches. Um, if they disagree on contraception or they disagree on abortion, they are going to say the church is wrong. I disagree with the church. I've had it with the church. I'm going to leave the church if I don't get my way. Okay,
Yep.
so they're 1 foot outside the door. On the traditionalist side, however, you have people saying, you know, religious liberty is a heresy. The true Catholic teaching is that error has no rights. The
Mm-hmm.
Pope is wrong. I'm the true Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got two opposed visions. You've got one on the left, you've got people who have 1 foot out the door. And on the right, you have people insisting that their error is correct and they are fully intent on staying. And so it's, for example, I mentioned the same-sex blessing document that came out from the CDF. And apparently, after that came out in Germany, you actually register what religion you are because the Catholic Church gets tax money based on the population of Catholics. Apparently, 700,000 people left the Catholic Church over that document. They went to the government office or online or however you do it, and they unregistered as Catholics. So that's a falling away more than a schism. And so even though Pope Francis keeps kind of repudiating a little bit, and there are criticisms that are going out, and they're playing this kind of tippy toe game because I think the fear is that the entire thing is just going to collapse in Germany. I think it may happen no matter what happens,
Sure.
but it's like okay, we're having this schism or not this schism. Sorry, wrong word. It was a Freudian slip. We're having this synod. Everyone's invited. Okay, Germans, you can come and you can put forward your proposals. Doesn't mean they're going to get approved. I mean, we haven't gotten to that point where Rome has signed off on anything from Germany. So it's sort of a honey versus vinegar. The traditionalists aren't going. The traditionalists I think might have to be kicked out if there is going to be a schism in that way, unless they might leave if they can't access any legitimate Latin masses. But I think it's you're dealing with two different problems. You're dealing with secularism on one hand, which is basically causing this huge slide of the church in the West, and then you've got this other branch that's within Catholicism that is insisting on a different ecclesiology, that's insisting on a revision of, it basically wants to delete a council and the past 60 years of magisterium.
Now, what I'll say here is that though you do have some instances where Rome is trying to rein in the German
Yeah,
problem. So, but I do think more can be done there. I do think Rome can and should do more there. So I want to say, I want to acknowledge there has been some efforts, but there does need to be more. I also want to say, on the other hand, with the radical traditionalists, they've been giving a great deal of freedom, a great deal of leeway for a lot longer than the German bishops have. Um, and so I I don't know. Although I think some of the disciplinary decisions can be excessive, I don't know. They've also been given a lot of leeway. Now, a huge difference, however, one is more touching on the area of heresy. The other one is touching more on the area of schism. So there is a little bit of a difference there. although eventually that heresy will also lead to schism, right?
Yeah.
So they're certainly related. But here's one big difference, though, and it may account for one of the reasons why we're seeing some differences here. I don't know if they justify them, but disciplining an Episcopal conference is different than disciplining laity who are fomenting schism. There's a huge difference. And I think the Pope, for better or worse, is being as careful as possible with an entire Episcopal conference, because if he makes the wrong move, it could be that an entire national church goes into schism, not just a group of laity and perhaps priests, but here you would have an entire nation of bishops. That doesn't justify any inconsistencies in the discipline between these two groups. That doesn't justify. And it also doesn't mean that more shouldn't be done with the Episcopal Conference of the German
Oh yeah.
bishops and other Flemish bishops. I'm not saying more shouldn't be done, but I wonder if that is what is in the back of Pope Francis's mind with this issue. Possibly.
Well, and I think part of it also is that they do publicly say that ultimately they're going to, on matters of doctrine, of matters that relate especially, like specifically to the universal church, that they will ultimately obey authority. Now, will they do that? I don't know. But I know that what winds up happening is things kind of start getting heated up. And then one or two of their leaders will meet with Pope Francis and meet with Cardinal Ladaria, sit down, and then everybody comes out smiling. So it's sort of like maybe in this meeting, it sounded like things were going okay. Okay, this is what we need to focus on. Now we understand each other. And then and then the German bishops leave and then go do whatever the heck they want to do. Like, I mean, that might be part of the dynamic too. Um, I mean, it's a human issue too. It's not, I mean, we have this tendency to think of things as like good guys, bad guys, black hats, white hats, but it's sort of like, what are the relationships here? What's the background behind these people? Germany is also sort of undergoing a crisis of credibility because they've been going through their abuse crisis for, the past 5 years, unlike us, who've been going through it for 20, 25 years. So it's, they're different sensitivities. Um, I think in terms of like regular Catholics, Pope Francis might be a little bit more sensitive to people who, you know, fall away or struggle with addictions or attractions or whatever than people who are just sort of like ideologically firm. um, that might be that might be a difference too. And I'm not saying that there aren't valid, yeah, I agree with you, there are valid criticisms of how it's handled, but I don't know that you or I could go in there and necessarily do it any better.
I don't know.
um,
I
I don't
don't know.
know. I mean, Pope Francis has been listening. He's been a
I'd,
priest
I'd
for.
love to give it a shot. So if Pope Francis wants to resign and appoint me
Well,
Pope somehow,
dicasteries can now be headed by lay people, so that that can always be your.
Rome, if you're listening, I'll throw my hat in the ring. I'm
So
up for the job.
yeah,
Here's a question for you from Michael Baumert. Um, does Mike see a similar danger of schism from the progressive side? We kind of touched
yeah.
on that,
I
but
mean, I would see it as a falling away more than a
mhm,
schism. I don't know that there's enough energy, honestly. Like you see progressive churches, they've collapsed faster. Episcopalians and so forth have collapsed faster than the Catholic Church. I think people just will just walk away. I mean, I think people who are professional, you know, liberal theologians and professional bishops might continue to try to do something, but I don't see them bringing congregations along with them or anything like that. I don't think it
mhm,
would be a schism of committed, progressive heretics. I don't see that coming. I see it as people just deciding they've had enough with the church and leaving. I mean, in Protestant countries like Finland and Sweden, they're down to 1% church attendance,
mm,
and I think the Catholic Church in certain places probably isn't very is
mm.
behind them, but I think it's the same trajectory.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. God bless.